Welcome, curious minds and eager learners. Here's a time travel ticket to the era of martial law and the period of activism to the Third Republic. We're not just leaping into textbooks, we're on an immersive expedition to understand and unravel the origin, events, impacts, and lasting effects of martial law in the nation's history. Get ready to embark on a learning adventure with me. Get a front row seat, here we go. Let's first discuss President Ferdinand E. Marcos, who proclaimed martial law in the Philippines.
Wow.
Ferdinand E. Marcos was born on September 11, 1917 in Sarat, Ilocos Norte. He died on September 28, 1989 in Honolulu, Hawaii, United States. He is the 10th President of the Philippines and was President from 1965 to 1986. He is also the first Philippine President to serve a second term. Now, in addition to that, his greatest achievements were in the areas of infrastructure development, safeguarding the country against communism, and international diplomacy. However, his administration was marred by massive government corruption, despotism, political repression, and human rights violations. And in 1986, he was toppled from power by massive demonstrations.
The demonstration started at the end of the year 1969.
In 1969, he won through a massive number of votes, and apparently, during the campaign, he had spent $60 million. Because of that, both buying and appreciation failed, and it became worse because this led to higher inflation, where the market value of the Philippine peso became lower. The inflation rate in 1969 was 1.96%, and it suddenly rose to 12.43% in 1970 and 21.40% in 1972. As a result, this massive spending had taken that toll and triggered growing public unrest. At the same time, when the oil-producing Arab countries decided to cut back oil production in response to the Western military aid to Israel in the Arab-Israeli conflict, oil prices also rose not only in the Philippines but also internationally. Then, the frequent visits of natural calamities brought havoc to the infrastructures and agricultural crops and livestock. What's more, the President's Fifth State of the Nation address or SONA triggered what we call the First Quarter Storm that eventually led to the Battle of Benjola. So, basically, the combined external and internal economic forces led to an uncontrolled decrease in the prices of prime commodities. Thus, the economic situation in the Philippines became dreary and social unrest continued. So, with this series of events, there was the immersion of protest. Hence, there came the period of activism. It is a period full of youth demonstrations advocating for government reform. Also, the reason why Ferdinand Marcos put the Philippines in a state of martial law. The period of activism lasted from 1970 to 1972.
Wow.
In this period, many young individuals became activists to advocate for government reform. They became activists because of the domestic and international problems, so the force of society motivated them to seek improvements. Inspired by the times of Lapu-Lapu, Lakandula, and Rizal, people, specifically the young, gained a sense of courage to rebel against the authority. So, just like how Lapu-Lapu fought in the Battle of Mactan, Lakandula being the paramount ruler of Tondo, and Rizal awakening the awareness of the Filipinos, the youth were inspired to take action. They conducted a lot of rallies to protest. Students in various colleges and universities held massive rallies and demonstrations to express their frustrations and resentments. Their protests were seen not only in the deadly marches and streets, but also in literature. One of the literatures was the placards in red paint with the word Makibaka on it, which means to death. They rallied the streets with this form of literature. Some of those who rallied with this literature are Rolando Tino, Rogelio Mangajas, Efren Abueg, Rio Alma, and Clemente Bautista. Now, during those times also, there was the re-emergence of the communist movement under the newly constituted Communist Party of the Philippines, or the CPP, along with the New People's Army, or the PPA, one of which is the Plaza Miranda bombing that led to the suspension of the writ of the habeas corpus. The Plaza Miranda bombing. On August 21, 1971, grenades exploded at Plaza Miranda in the city of Manila during a public meeting of the Liberal Party. Marcos accused the communist movement as the perpetrators of the bombing. Acting on such an event, on August 23, 1971, President Ferdinand Marcos issued Proclamation Number 889, suspending the privilege of the writ of the habeas corpus on the entire country.
Oh my god!
The writ of habeas corpus is a legal order that protects an individual's right to personal liberty by requiring authorities to justify the detention of a person. So, the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus gives the authorities the power to arrest and detain individuals without the need to provide evidence or bring them before a court. So, not long thereafter, the country again faced a massive resurgence of subversive activities. Bombings were intensified, targeting public urban poverty and residences of prominent personalities. It resulted in casualties, injuries, and disruptions, reflecting a period of heightened political unrest and violence in the country. Also, even the defense secretary Juan Ponteng was ambushed in Mandaluyong, Metro Manila. So, with a series of events, the declaration of martial law was justified. Marcos claimed that it was the last defense against the rising disorder caused by increasingly violent youth activists and the alleged threat of community insurgency, thus the need for national security. It was on September 21, 1972, when President Ferdinand Marcos signed Proclamation Number 1081 imposing martial law in the Philippines in accordance with the presidential authority outlined in the 1935 Philippine Constitution. This granted the President command of the armed forces of the Philippines to uphold law and order. Additionally, it bestowed decision-making powers on the President for whether or not a person would remain innocent of crime. In addition, Marcos also introduced the new society concept. It included peace and order, land reform, education reform, labor reform, government reorganization, economic reform, and social services. By that, the period of new society started. The period of new society. In his first address to the nation after issuing Proclamation Number 1081, President Marcos said that martial law has two objectives. First, to save the republic. Second, to reform the social, economic, and political institutions in our country. So, in accordance with the two objectives, President Marcos issued general orders and letters of instructions to that effect. A list of people were to be appointed. He would rule by presidential decree. The media would be controlled by his government. A curfew from midnight until 4 a.m. was to be observed. Carrying of firearms except by military and security personnel was banned, as were strikes and demonstrations. Also, he ordered the takeover of major public utilities, privately owned aircraft and watercraft, and imposed restrictions on travel documents, police clearances, and tax clearances for Filipino citizens intending to leave the country.
Now, let's proceed to the effects of martial law.
Let's start with the details in Iraq. The military broke up more than 149 private companies, crime syndicates were dismantled, more than 500,000 used firearms were confiscated, thousands of criminal and lawless elements were either captured and detained or killed in encounters with combined military police operatives, and lastly, prominent individuals from various fields were arrested and detained. This includes famous opposition figures like Pinoy Aquino, Pepe Chacna, Ramon Mitre Jr., and Francisco Soccer Pico. Even in October 1972, Iloilo City Mayor and former Senator Bolito Garzon, as well as Vice Consul Fernando Santos, were arrested on charges of wearing military uniforms and engaging in suspected terrorist activity. On the other hand, the Communist Party of the Philippines, the New People's Army or the CPP-MPA, suffered heavy losses with leaders including Jose Maria Sison and MPA chief Bernardino Boscaino, captured, and over 90,000 of its members and supporters either fled or surrendered to the public. Now let's move to the public utilities during this time. Public utilities. During martial law, public utilities were closed, including Meralco, Del Beauty, Nawasa, PNR, Philippine Airlines, Air Manila, and Filipinas Orient Airways. And when it came to the media, prominent media outlets, including newspapers, magazines, and broadcasting stations, were forcibly shut down by soldiers. Thousands of journalists, editors, and media personnel were arrested and imprisoned without proper legal proceedings. media entities were taken over by Marxist loyalists, contributing to the suppression of independent media. With mass media becoming a propaganda tool for Marcos, people created an underground media, with activists establishing community papers and Filipino journalists writing for the so-called mosquito press in the 1980s. Now let's proceed with the literature. During this period also, as an influence of the Marcos-controlled media, poetry centered on themes of patience, respect for native culture and customs, and the beauty of the nature and the surroundings. Then, the government actively participated in reviving traditional faiths like the Tagalog Sarsiala, Tanakalu, and Imbayapa of the Muslims, showcasing them in cultural venues such as the Ribot Metropolitan Theater, the Cultural Center of the Philippines, and the Folk Arts Theater. And the television plays like Gulong ng Palad and Flor de Luna gained popularity,
Wow.
while Filipino films dominated Metro Manila theater in the 1950s and 1960s, celebrated annually through the Pista ng mga Pelikulang Pilipino or the Filipino Film Festival. Meanwhile, newspapers focused towards topics like economic growth, discipline, culture, and tourism, moving away from sensationalist crime stories.
Wow.
And alongside these cultural developments, there was also a notable presence of protest literature, proletarian literature, prison literature, and circumvention literature, each addressing social, political, and censorship-related concerns. Now, we're done discussing the effects of martial law, so now tackle any specific contributors that played a crucial role in the continuation and end of martial law. And that is the 1973 Constitution of the
Wow.
Philippines. The following year, after the day of martial law, the 1973 Constitution was introduced. It marked a significant turn in the country's political structure. It discusses the shift from a presidential to a parliamentary system of governance, wherein it legalized all decrees, proclamations, and orders by the president. And with the Constitution's amendments in 1976, 1980, 1981, and 1984, martial law continued.
Wow.
The president became prime minister. The retirement of judiciary members was extended to 17 years, and the electoral reforms were made. Thus, it allowed Marcos to stay in power. Then, after putting in force amendments to the constitutions and legislations, securing his sweeping powers, President Marcos declared martial law on January 3, 1981. However, the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus continued in the autonomous regions of Eastern Mindanao and Central Mindanao, and President Marcos called it the New Republic of the Philippines. However, historians called it the Republic of the Philippines.
Wow.
The reason as to why they said that this is the Third Republic of the Philippines because according to them, the First Republic was during the Philippine Republic of Emilio Aguinaldo when he first got our independence from the Spaniards on June 12, 1898.
Wow.
Then, the second was when the Americans granted us our independence on July 4, 1946. The period of Third Republic. The period of Third Republic lasted from 1981 to 1985. During this time, it was impossible to deny that the continued oppression and repression led many people to rebel and protest. This stage of the nation's history had its effect on our literature, especially after Benigno Aquino was assassinated on August 21, 1983. Due to that, the people's voices could no longer be contained. Now, in the period of Third Republic, we'll be discussing the years after martial law, and specifically, the aftermath of martial law. Let's start with the literature during this period. Literature. During the Third Republic, poetry reflected romantic and revolutionary themes, openly criticizing the government with provocative language. Meanwhile, Filipino songs were really true to life, reflecting grief, poverty, freedom, aspiration, and love, while the annual Filipino Film Festival continued alongside the persistent influence in festival.
Wow.
Media. In the media, the Jaja movement or the Justice for Aquino, Justice for All movement boycotted government-controlled newspapers, symbolizing that of the press freedom through protest with coffee. And campus demonstrations involved burning newspapers to protest perceived lack of freedom of expression, resulting in a marked by illegal charges, lawsuits, and seditious strikes. Now, let's talk about the presidential election during this period. Presidential election. On June 16, 1981, 6 months after the end of martial law, the first presidential election in 12 years took place.
Wow.
As anticipated, President Marcos secured victory over rivals. He was inaugurated on June 30, 1981, but his administration lasted less than 5 years, facing economic and political crises that ultimately led to its downfall. And the major contributor to this is the Aquino assassination. On August 21, 1983, former Senator Aquino returned to the Philippines. He was suspect at the tarmac of the Manila International Airport while in the custody of the Aviation Security Command. The assassination stunned the whole nation, if not even the whole world. In a mass show of sympathy and awe, about 2 million people attended the funeral of the late Senator from Santo Domingo Church to Manila Memorial. So, when the idol of the Philippine masses whom they hoped to be the next president was assassinated, surely massive rallies emerged and eventually led to the People's Power Revolution toppling Marcos from power, and the Philippines gaining its freedom once again. Thus, just like the period of New Society, the period of Third Republic was also full of youth protests and demonstrations. However, the intensity was on another level. Philippine society was in turmoil. With the death of Aquino sparking the people's power successfully, Marcos was toppled from power. Now, to conclude, martial law and period of activism to Third Republic shaped our social, political, and environmental landscape in many different ways that we could imagine. Its impact varies greatly depending on various circumstances. For some, it may mean increased security and economic development, while for others it brings suffering, oppression, and loss. Nevertheless, it taught us that obtaining freedom requires to take action. It will not come to us by just sitting in. It's just like what Constantino Pinal said. Life, what would it be if one is a coward who does not take back for his job and his succeeding generation? Thus, it taught us to stand up for ourselves and voice out. That's all for today. I hope you learned something.